Captain Lee Dabin pressed her face against the thick glass window of the observation deck. Below her stretched the largest fighting arena she had ever seen. The floor was made of some kind of black metal that seemed to absorb light. Strange symbols glowed along the edges in colors that hurt her eyes to look at directly. "Impressive, is it not?" said a deep voice behind her. Dobbin turned around slowly. A creature that looked like a giant lizard wearing fancy robes stood near the doorway. Its scales were dark green and its eyes were bright yellow with black slits down the middle. When it smiled, she could see rows of sharp teeth. "You must be the human representative," the creature continued. "I am Veltar, the tournament organizer. Welcome to the Nexus Arena." Dabin bowed politely. "Thank you for having me. This place is certainly bigger than anything we have on Earth." Veltar made a sound that might have been laughter. "Your planet is still very young in the ways of galactic civilization. Tell me, Captain Lee, how many wars has your species won against other star-traveling peoples?"
"None," Dobbin answered honestly.
"We only made contact with alien life 5 years ago." "Ah, yes, I remember now." Veltar walked over to join her at the window. 5 years. Such a short time. Most species spend decades learning how to fight properly in space before they dare to enter tournaments like this one. Down in the arena, 2 creatures were fighting. One looked like a walking tree made of metal. The other was shaped like a giant spider but had wings instead of a web. The metal tree creature grabbed one of the spider's legs and threw it across the arena. The spider hit the far wall with a loud crash that Dobbin could hear even through the thick glass. "The Ironbark Collective versus the Sky Weavers," Veltar explained. "Both species have been fighting in galactic tournaments for over 200 years. They know every trick, every weakness, every way to win." The spider creature got back up and shot some kind of web from its mouth. The web wrapped around the metal tree's arms and legs. Then the spider flew into the air and dropped the tree creature on its head. The crowd around the arena cheered loudly. "Exciting, yes?" Veltar asked. "But I wonder, what can your people possibly offer in a competition like this? Humans are so small, so soft. You have no natural weapons like claws or poison. You cannot fly or change your shape. You cannot even see in the dark properly." Dobbin watched the fight below without turning to look at the alien. "We adapt," she said simply. "Adapt?" Veltar sounded amused. "Many species can adapt, Captain. The Keth Empire adapts by growing thicker armor. The Vrick swarms adapt by splitting into smaller parts when attacked. The Shatter Worlds adapt by becoming liquid when they need to escape. What do humans do that is so special?" Before Dobbin could answer, another voice called out from across the observation deck. "Dobbin, there you are!" A young Korean man in a military uniform walked toward them. He had short black hair and looked worried about something. Behind him came a woman about the same age. She wore the dark blue uniform of an Earth engineer and carried a tablet computer in her hands. "Lieutenant Park Ji-ho," Dobbin said as the man approached. "And Engineer Kim So-ra. How was your tour of the facility?" Ji-ho glanced at Veltar nervously. "Interesting. Very interesting. The technology here is far ahead of anything we have back home." So-ra looked up from her tablet. "The energy shields alone use power sources we have never seen before, and the gravity controls let them change the weight of objects during fights. Some matches happen with no gravity at all." Veltar seemed pleased by their amazement. "Yes, the Nexus Arena represents the best technology from 12 different star empires. It took 300 years to build. Every safety system, every weapon scanner, every medical facility has been tested in thousands of tournaments." "How many species usually compete?" Dabin asked. "This year we have 47 different peoples represented," Veltar replied, "though some send multiple fighters. The Vrick swarms always send at least 5 individuals who can combine into larger forms. The Iron Scale Alliance brings 3 fighters who use different types of powered armor." Ji-ho frowned. "And humans are sending just 1 fighter?" "Earth Command thought it would be better to start small," Dobbin explained. "Learn how these tournaments work before we commit more resources." Veltar made that laughing sound again. "Very wise, very safe. Though I must admit, the other species are quite curious about your people. Some have heard stories about human warfare from the border worlds." "What kind of stories?" So-ra asked, looking up from her tablet. "Oh, nothing too dramatic," Veltar said with a wave of his clawed hand. "Tales of humans fighting against impossible odds and somehow surviving. Probably exaggerated, as most war stories are." Down in the arena, the metal tree creature had somehow freed itself from the web. It picked up the spider and threw it at the ceiling. The spider bounced off some kind of invisible barrier and fell back down to the arena floor. This time it did not get back up. The crowd cheered again. Many of the alien spectators were huge compared to humans. Dobbin could see creatures with 4 arms, beings that looked like living rocks, and others that seemed to be made of pure energy held inside mechanical suits. The fights look very intense, Jiho observed. How often do competitors get seriously injured? Rarely, Veltar assured him. The medical facilities here can repair almost any injury short of complete destruction. And the arena systems prevent most fatal attacks automatically. Most? Sora asked. Well, accidents do happen, usually when a fighter tries something truly foolish. Veltar looked directly at Dobbin. Which is why I hope you will be very careful, Captain Lee. Your species is new to this level of competition. It would be unfortunate if Earth's first representative suffered an embarrassing defeat. Dobbin met his yellow gaze calmly. I appreciate your concern. Good. Veltar turned back toward the door. The opening ceremonies begin in 2 hours. All competitors must register their fighting styles and weapon preferences with the tournament officials. I trust you have given this considerable thought? I have, Dobbin replied. After Veltar left, the 3 humans stood quietly watching more fights in the arena below. Jiho was the first to speak. He does not think much of our chances. None of them do, Sora agreed. I have been monitoring the communication networks. Most species are treating human participation as a joke. Dobbin smiled slightly. Good. That will make things easier. Jiho looked at her with concern. Dobbin, some of these creatures are twice your size and covered in natural armor. Are you sure about this? Very sure, Dobbin said, still watching the arena. They see small and soft and think weak. They see no claws and think defenseless. They see human and think limited. And what do you see when you look at them? Sora asked. Dobbin turned away from the window. I see patterns, habits, things they do the same way every time because that is how their species has always done them. She headed toward the door. Come on. We have 2 hours to study every fight recording they have. I want to know exactly what we are dealing with. The main hall of the Nexus Arena buzzed with activity as dozens of alien species gathered for the opening ceremonies. Dobbin walked between towering creatures that looked like living nightmares. Some had too many arms. Others had faces where their stomachs should be. A few floated in the air without any visible means of support. Stay close, Jiho whispered as they moved through the crowd. Some of these species might consider us food. Sora checked her tablet. Actually, according to the tournament rules, all participants must follow strict dietary guidelines. No eating other competitors. How comforting, Jiho muttered. They found their assigned seating area marked with Earth's symbol. The chairs were clearly made for humans, which meant they were tiny compared to most of the other seating arrangements. Around them, massive stone benches accommodated rock-like beings, while crystalline platforms held creatures made of living glass. A group of 8-foot-tall reptilian warriors approached their section. Their leader was even larger than Veltar, with darker scales and several scars across his face. His yellow eyes focused on Dobbin with obvious amusement. So you are the human fighter, he said in heavily accented English. I am Grovash of the Keth Empire. I have heard much about your species. Dobbin stood and bowed politely. Captain Lee Dobbin. What have you heard? Grovash laughed, showing rows of sharp teeth. That you are very good at running away from fights. That you hide behind machines and long-range weapons because you are too weak for real combat. Several other Keth warriors gathered around, all of them towering over the humans. Their natural armor plating gleamed under the arena lights. Running away can be a valid tactic, Dobbin replied calmly. Sometimes the smart choice is to avoid a fight you cannot win. But this is a tournament, another Keth warrior said. There is nowhere to run. You must stand and fight like a true warrior. Or fall quickly and save everyone's time, Grovash added. The other Keth warriors found this very funny. After they left, a new group approached. These creatures looked like giant insects with multiple arms and compound eyes that reflected the light in rainbow patterns. Their leader moved with quick, jerky motions that reminded Dobbin of a praying mantis. Greetings, Softflesh, the insect creature said. Its voice sounded like clicking and buzzing translated through a mechanical device. I am Tikhal of the Vrick Swarms. We have studied your species extensively. Have you? Dobbin asked. What did you learn? That you are individually weak but work well in large groups. Like us. but without the proper biological connections. Tikal's head tilted sideways in a way that would have broken a human neck. Perhaps you should have brought more fighters. One human alone seems insufficient. The tournament allows only one primary fighter per species, Sora pointed out. Yes, but some species find ways around such rules. Tikal gestured toward a section where 5 identical insect creatures sat together. We are technically one fighter who happens to exist in multiple bodies, Jiho frowned. That seems like cheating. It is creative interpretation, Tikal corrected. Something your species might learn if you survive long enough. More alien groups stopped by to examine the humans. Some were curious. Others seemed hungry. Most appeared to view them as an interesting novelty that would be eliminated early in the competition. A floating, jellyfish-like creature drifted over, its transparent body pulsing with bioluminescent patterns. Human friend, it said in a voice like singing crystal. Why does your warrior carry no visible weapons? Tabin looked down at her simple military uniform. Unlike many other fighters, she wore no armor and carried no obvious weapons. I prefer to travel light. But the tournament allows personal weapons up to Class 7 energy output, the jellyfish creature continued. Most fighters bring their best equipment. Maybe she plans to forfeit immediately, suggested a creature that looked like a walking tree made of metal. Save herself the embarrassment of being defeated. Or maybe, said a new voice, she knows something you do not. Everyone turned to see who had spoken. A tall, thin alien with pale blue skin and silver eyes stood nearby. Unlike the others, this creature wore simple robes similar to Dobbin's plain uniform. Ah, Kelthor of the Silent Reaches, Tikal said with less friendliness in his clicking voice. Still playing the mysterious sage, I see. Kelthor ignored the insect's sarcasm and addressed Dobbin directly. Your species is young to galactic civilization, but not to warfare. The border worlds speak of human conflicts with respect. Respect? Grovash snorted. For creatures with no claws, no armor, no natural weapons? What could possibly be respectable about human warfare? They fight wars they cannot win and somehow win them anyway, Kelthor replied quietly. They turn their weaknesses into strengths and their enemies' strengths into weaknesses. The crowd of aliens grew quiet for a moment. Then Tikal began clicking in what Dobbin assumed was laughter. Philosophy and pretty words will not help in the arena, the Vrix leader said. Combat is about strength, speed, and natural advantages. Humans have none of these things. We shall see, Kelthor said. He nodded to Dobbin and walked away. As the opening ceremonies began, Dobbin found herself studying every alien fighter in the hall. She watched how they moved, how they interacted with others of their species, how they held themselves when they thought no one was looking. The Keth warriors stood with their weight forward, always ready to charge. The Vrix moved in perfect synchronization even when separated. The jellyfish creatures never stayed in one place for more than a few seconds. The metal tree being swayed slightly as if moved by an unfelt wind. Learning anything useful? Jiho asked quietly. Everyone has patterns, Dobbin replied. Natural behaviors they cannot help. The Keth assume all fights will be direct confrontations. The Vrix expect to overwhelm enemies with numbers. The others all have similar blind spots. And humans? Sora wondered. What patterns do we have? Dobbin smiled slightly as Veltar took the stage to begin the formal presentations. We assume nothing and adapt to everything. The tournament organizer began calling each species to present their fighters. Massive creatures roared challenges at the crowd. Flying beings performed aerial displays. Energy-based life forms created light shows that hurt to look at directly. Finally, Veltar called out the humans of Earth, represented by Captain Lee Dobbin. Dobbin walked to the center of the arena floor. Compared to the spectacular displays before her, she simply stood quietly and bowed to the crowd. No roaring, no weapons demonstration, no impressive physical display. The alien audience began murmuring among themselves. Some seemed confused by her simplicity. Others appeared to view it as proof of human weakness. Captain Lee, Veltar announced, please demonstrate your fighting capabilities for the tournament records. Dobbin looked around the arena, then up at the thousands of alien spectators. I prefer to save my demonstration for the actual fights. More murmuring from the crowd, much of it sounding like laughter. Very well, Veltar said. Let the tournament begin tomorrow at sunrise. As Dobbin walked back to her section, She could hear aliens throughout the hall making bets on how quickly she would be defeated. Most seemed to think she would last less than 30 seconds against any real opponent. They really do not respect us at all, Jiho observed. Good, Dobbin replied, settling back into her chair. Respect makes enemies careful. I prefer them confident. The morning of the first fights arrived with artificial sunrise that painted the arena in shades of gold and red. Dobbin stood in the preparation chamber, stretching her muscles and reviewing everything she had learned about her first opponent. Quelrix of the Shatter Worlds, Sora read from her tablet. Crystalline life form capable of shifting between solid and semi-liquid states. Can absorb kinetic energy and redirect it at attackers. Average height 7 feet. No known weaknesses listed in the official records. But there are always weaknesses, Dobbin said, continuing her stretching routine. I watched recordings of 17 different Shatterworld fighters from previous tournaments. They all do the same things. Jiho paced nervously near the door. The betting pools have you at 300 to 1 odds of winning. Most aliens think you will be eliminated in the first 30 seconds. What do you think? Dobbin asked. I think they are about to learn something important about humans. The preparation chamber door opened and Veltar entered, followed by 2 smaller reptilian assistants. Captain Lee, it is time. Your opponent is already in the arena. Dobbin nodded and walked toward the door. As she passed Veltar, the tournament organizer spoke quietly. I hope you have prepared some kind of strategy. Quelrix has won 43 fights and lost only 2. Both losses came against opponents who used energy weapons that could disrupt his crystalline matrix. I do not have energy weapons, Dobbin replied. No, you do not. Veltar sounded genuinely concerned. Perhaps you could forfeit with honor. No one would think less of your species for avoiding an impossible fight. Thank you for the advice, Dobbin said politely, and continued walking. The tunnel leading to the arena floor was long and dark. As Dobbin emerged into the light, she could hear the roar of thousands of alien voices. The arena floor had been configured as a simple circular space about 50 meters across. No obstacles, no weapons, just bare metal floor and high walls. On the opposite side of the arena stood her opponent. Quelrix looked exactly like the recordings, but seeing him in person was different. His body appeared to be made of living diamond that caught and reflected the arena lights in brilliant patterns. When he moved, parts of his form became fluid while other sections remained solid. Fighters, approach the center, commanded Veltar's voice from the speakers. Dobbin walked forward, noting how Quelrix moved. His steps were perfectly regular, and his crystalline feet always made contact with the ground in the same way. Even when parts of his body shifted to liquid, his core remained solid and followed predictable patterns. They stopped 3 meters apart. Up close, Dobbin could see that Quelrix's face was a constantly shifting arrangement of crystal formations. When he spoke, his voice sounded like wind chimes in a storm. Human warrior, he said, I have studied your species. You are made of soft organic matter that breaks easily. I will try to end this quickly so you do not suffer. That is very considerate, Dobbin replied. I will try to do the same. The crowd found this exchange hilarious. Their laughter echoed throughout the arena. Fighters, prepare for combat, Veltar announced. Begin when the signal sounds. Dobbin took a standard fighting stance, feet shoulder-width apart, hands raised defensively. Quelrix's form began shifting more rapidly, with flowing sections of liquid crystal moving around his solid core. The signal sounded. Quelrix immediately launched himself forward, his entire body becoming a wave of liquid crystal aimed at engulfing Dobbin. This was exactly what she had expected. Every Shatterworld fighter in the recordings had started their fights the same way. Dobbin dove to her right but not to escape. As Quelrix's liquid form flowed past her, she could see his solid core matrix moving through the center of the wave. The core was always in the same position relative to the liquid portions, always following the same internal structure. She rolled to her feet and sprinted directly at where the core would be in 2 seconds. Her timing was perfect. As Quelrix began to solidify again, Dobbin drove her elbow into a specific point on his crystalline chest. The impact sent a shockwave through Quelrix's entire body. His form froze halfway between liquid and solid, creating an unstable mixture that could not move properly. Impossible, Quelrix managed to say, his voice now crackling like breaking glass. Dobbin did not pause to explain. She struck 3 more precise points on his crystalline structure. Each blow targeted a stress point where solid and liquid crystal met. Within seconds, Quelrix's entire form locked into a solid state that he could not change. The arena fell completely silent. Quelrix tried to move but could only manage small, jerky motions. His ability to shift between states had been completely disrupted by Dobbin's precise strikes to his matrix points. "I yield," he said, his voice barely audible. "Winner, Captain Lee Dobbin of Earth," Veltar announced, though he sounded as shocked as everyone else. The silence stretched for several more seconds before scattered applause began from different sections of the arena. Most of the audience seemed too surprised to react properly. Dobbin helped Quelrix walk to the medical station at the edge of the arena. The crystalline being's condition was not permanent, but it would take the medical staff several hours to restore his natural abilities. "How?" Quelrix asked as the medical technicians began their work. "My people have fought in these tournaments for centuries. No one has ever discovered those weakness points. They were not hidden," Dobbin explained. "Every time a Shatterworld fighter shifts states, the core matrix has to stabilize at specific points. Those points create stress fractures that can be exploited if you know where to look and when to strike." "But how could you possibly know our internal structure?" Dobbin shrugged. "I watched recordings and paid attention to patterns. All living things have patterns, even when they can change their shape." As she walked back across the arena floor, Dobbin could hear the alien audience discussing what they had witnessed. Many sounded confused. Others seemed worried. A few were clearly recalculating their opinions about human capabilities. In the tunnel leading back to the preparation areas, Jiho and Sora were waiting with huge smiles on their faces. "That was incredible," Sora said. "The way you identified his weak points and struck them in perfect sequence." "The crowd cannot believe what just happened," Jiho added. "Half of them think it was luck. The other half are starting to take us seriously." Dobbin nodded but did not look particularly pleased with herself. "One fight down. Many more to go. Are you worried about the next opponents?" Sora asked. "No," Dobbin replied, "but they should be worried about me. After today, they will start studying human fighting techniques. They will try to prepare for what I might do next." "Is that a problem?" Dobbin smiled as they reached the preparation chamber. "Only if they figure out the right things to prepare for." Through the thick walls, they could still hear the alien audience arguing about what they had witnessed. Voices rose in dozens of different languages as species tried to understand how a small, soft human had defeated one of the tournament's most formidable fighters. "Let them talk," Dobbin said, settling into a chair to rest before the next round. "The more they overthink this, the easier my job becomes." Outside, the tournament continued with other first-round matches, but Dobbin knew that everything had changed. She was no longer the joke competitor that everyone expected to lose quickly. She was now a threat that the other species would have to take seriously, which, she reflected with quiet satisfaction, was exactly what she had wanted. 2 days after Dobbin's victory over Quelrix, the atmosphere in the Nexus arena had changed completely. Aliens who had previously ignored the human delegation now watched Dobbin's every movement with careful attention. Conversation stopped when she walked by. Even the maintenance workers paused their duties to stare at the small human who had shocked the galactic community. "The other competitors are scared," Sora observed as she reviewed data on her tablet. "Communication intercepts show increased coordination between species that normally compete against each other." Dobbin sat quietly in the observation deck, watching the latest round of matches. She had already won her second fight against a gas-based life form that could create toxic clouds. The creature had expected her to retreat from its poison attacks, but Dobbin had studied atmospheric readings and identified safe pockets of air within the toxic field. She had navigated through the gas cloud and disabled her opponent's containment suit in under 2 minutes. "They are forming alliances," Jiho said, joining them at the window. "I just spoke with one of the tournament officials. 3 major factions have requested private meetings with each other. That has never happened in any previous tournament." "Which factions?" Dobbin asked, though she suspected she already knew. "The Keth Empire, the Vrix Swarms, and something called the Iron Scale Alliance. They represent about half of the remaining competitors." Dobbin nodded. This was exactly what she had expected after her second victory. Individual species could explain away one human success as luck or unusual circumstances. 2 victories suggested a pattern that threatened their assumptions about human weakness. "What do you think they are planning?" Sora wondered. They want to eliminate me before I can advance to the final rounds, Dobbin replied. The question is how they plan to do it within tournament rules. Her answer came the next morning when Veltar arrived at their quarters with an official announcement scroll. The reptilian tournament organizer looked uncomfortable as he unrolled the document. Captain Lee, I regret to inform you that your quarterfinal match has been modified according to subsection 47 of the tournament charter. Modified how? Jiho asked suspiciously. You will face 3 opponents simultaneously. Grovash of the Keth Empire, Zixara of the Vrick Swarms, and Thelmach of the Ironscale Alliance. The room fell silent. Sora looked up from her tablet with disbelief. 3 opponents at once? That cannot be legal. Veltar shifted uncomfortably. According to the charter, when a single species shows unusual combat effectiveness that might unbalance the tournament, the organizing committee may invoke special protocols to maintain competitive fairness. Fairness? Jiho's voice rose with anger. 3 against 1 is fairness? The ruling states that humans are considered a collective entry rather than individual competitors. Veltar explained. Since your species works so effectively as a group, it is deemed appropriate to test your representative against multiple individual opponents. Dobbin remained calm throughout this explanation. She had read the tournament charter thoroughly and knew that such clauses existed, even though they had never been used before. When is the match scheduled? She asked. Tomorrow at midday. The arena will be configured in standard combat mode with no special modifications. Veltar paused, then added quietly, Captain, I must advise you that these 3 fighters are among the most dangerous in the tournament. Each one could easily win the entire competition under normal circumstances. I understand, Dobbin replied. Thank you for the notification. After Veltar left, Jiho began pacing angrily around the room. This is completely unfair. They are breaking their own rules because they are afraid of losing to a human. Actually, Sora said, checking her tablet, they are following the rules very carefully. The tournament charter really does allow this kind of modification under specific circumstances. Then we should protest. Contact Earth Command. File a formal complaint with the Galactic Sports Council. Dobbin stood up from her chair. No. Jiho stared at her. Dobbin, you cannot seriously be thinking of fighting all 3 of them at once. Why not? Because it is impossible. Grovash is 8 feet tall and covered in natural armor. Zixara can split into multiple fighting forms. Thelmach wears powered combat armor with energy weapons. Any one of them would be a difficult opponent. All 3 together will be so focused on coordinating their attack that they will not be thinking clearly about individual tactics. Dobbin finished. Sora looked uncertain. That is a very optimistic way to view the situation. Dobbin walked to the window and looked down at the arena floor where other matches were taking place. Tell me, what do you see when you watch these fights? Jiho and Sora joined her at the window. Below them, a creature made of living rock was battling something that looked like a giant metallic snake. 2 very different fighting styles, Sora said. The rock creature relies on strength and durability. The snake uses speed and flexibility. Exactly. Each species has developed combat techniques based on their natural advantages. They are all very good at fighting opponents who are similar to creatures they have faced before. Dobbin turned away from the window. But how often do you think they have practiced working together with completely different species? Probably never, Jiho admitted. The Keth Empire fights by charging directly at enemies and overwhelming them with brute force. The Vrick Swarms use coordinated group tactics with perfect communication between multiple bodies. The Ironscale Alliance relies on advanced technology and superior equipment. Dobbin sat back down. Those are 3 completely different approaches to combat. So you think they will interfere with each other? Sora asked. I think they will try so hard to coordinate their different fighting styles that they will create opportunities I can exploit. Jiho still looked worried. That is assuming you can survive their initial attack. If all 3 of them rush you at once... They will not all rush me at once, Dobbin said confidently. Grovash will want to charge directly. Zixara will want to surround me with multiple forms. Thelmach will want to maintain distance and use ranged weapons. They cannot all do these things simultaneously without getting in each other's way. She stood up again and headed toward her equipment bag. I need to study recordings of all 3 fighters. I want to know exactly how they move, how they react under pressure, and what they do when their primary tactics fail. What can we do to help? Sora asked. Find out everything you can about their equipment and abilities. I also want to know the exact dimensions of the arena and what environmental controls will be active during the fight. Jiho nodded, his anger replaced by determination. And if the tournament organizers try to modify the rules again? Dabin smiled grimly. Then we adapt. That is what humans do best. As they began their preparations, word of the modified match spread throughout the arena. Alien spectators who had been merely curious about the human fighter now viewed the upcoming battle as the most significant event of the entire tournament. Betting pools opened with odds of over 1,000 to 1 against Dabin. Some species placed bets purely for entertainment value, assuming the fight would end within minutes. Others saw it as an opportunity to witness the final proof that humans were not suited for galactic-level competition. In the preparation chambers, Grovash, Zixara, and Thelmok met to discuss their strategy. Despite representing different species and empires, they had one common goal: eliminate the human threat before she could advance any further. The human uses precision strikes against structural weak points, Grovash said, his scarred face showing concentration. We must not give her opportunities to study our movements. Agreed, clicked Zixara. My swarm forms will keep her constantly moving while you and Thelmok attack from different angles. Thelmok's mechanical voice buzzed through his armor's speakers. My analysis suggests the human relies on opponents following predictable patterns. We must be unpredictable. What none of them realized was that their conversation was being recorded by the tournament's official monitoring systems, and Dabin had requested access to all publicly available information about her opponents. As she reviewed their strategic discussion that evening, Dabin smiled quietly to herself. The three aliens were so concerned about being unpredictable that they had revealed exactly what they were planning to do. Tomorrow will be interesting, she said softly, and began preparing for the most important fight of her life. The arena had never been more crowded. Every seat was filled with alien spectators who had come to witness what many believed would be the end of human participation in galactic tournaments. The betting pools had closed at 2,000 to 1 odds against Dabin, with most aliens viewing the match as entertainment rather than actual competition. Dabin stood in the preparation tunnel, listening to the roar of thousands of voices above her. The sound was different from previous matches. There was an excitement in the air that felt almost electric. Final equipment check, Sora said, though there was little equipment to check. Dabin wore her standard military uniform with reinforced joints and impact padding. No weapons, no armor, no technological enhancements beyond basic protective gear. Communications are working properly, Jiho reported. We will be able to provide tactical support if needed. Dabin shook her head. No communications during the fight. They might be monitoring our frequencies. Besides, this will happen too fast for advice. She walked toward the arena entrance, then paused. If something goes wrong, nothing will go wrong, Jiho said firmly. You have studied everything about these opponents. You know their strengths, their weaknesses, their habits. You are ready for this. And if you are not ready, Sora added with a slight smile, then no human ever could be. Dabin nodded and stepped into the bright lights of the arena floor. The crowd noise increased dramatically as she appeared. Alien voices called out in dozens of languages, most of them clearly not offering encouragement. She could see Veltar in the official viewing box, his reptilian face showing obvious concern. On the opposite side of the arena, her three opponents made their entrance together. Grovash led the way, his 8-foot frame covered in thick scales that looked like natural armor. Behind him came Zixara, currently in a single form but already beginning to split into multiple bodies. Thelmok brought up the rear, his powered armor gleaming with energy weapons and advanced targeting systems. The arena floor had been configured as a large, circular space with several levels of platforms and obstacles. Unlike her previous fights, this environment offered multiple tactical options for both offense and defense. Fighters, advance to the center, Veltar's voice echoed through the speakers. As they approached the center, Dabin studied her opponent's movements carefully. Grovash walked with aggressive confidence, each step landing heavily on the metal floor. Zixara's multiple forms moved in perfect synchronization, never breaking their careful formation. Thelmok's armor systems hummed with power as various scanners and targeting devices tracked Dabin's position. They stopped 10 meters apart, forming a triangle with Dobbin at one point and her 3 opponents spread across from her. "Human warrior," Grovash called out. "You have fought well against single opponents. But no creature can stand against the combined might of 3 galactic empires. We offer you one final chance to surrender with honor," Thelmach added, his mechanical voice amplified by external speakers. Zixara said nothing, but her multiple forms began spreading out to surround Dobbin's position. "Thank you for the offer," Dobbin replied, loud enough for the crowd to hear, "but I think I will see how this plays out." The arena erupted in noise as alien spectators reacted to her refusal to surrender. Most seemed to view her response as either foolish bravery or simple stubbornness. "Fighters, prepare for combat," Veltar announced. "This match will continue until one side yields or is unable to continue. Begin when the signal sounds." Dabin took her standard fighting stance, but her eyes were not focused on any single opponent. Instead, she watched the spaces between them, calculating angles and distances. The signal sounded. All 3 opponents moved simultaneously, exactly as Dobbin had predicted. Grovash charged straight forward with a thunderous roar, his massive claws extended. Zixara's multiple forms spread out to attack from both sides, moving with perfect coordination. Thelmach activated his armor's flight systems and rose into the air, energy weapons charging for ranged attacks. For 1 second, it looked like the perfect coordinated assault. Then Dobbin moved. Instead of trying to dodge or defend, she sprinted directly toward Grovash's charge. The Keth warrior expected her to try to escape his attack, not meet it head-on. As they were about to collide, Dobbin dropped into a slide that carried her between his legs. At the exact moment she passed under him, she grabbed his ankle and used his own momentum to redirect his charge. Grovash, moving at full speed and unable to stop, crashed directly into 2 of Zixara's approaching forms. The collision sent all 3 creatures tumbling across the arena floor in a tangle of limbs and confusion. Zixara's perfect coordination was broken, as her forms became mixed up with Grovash's thrashing attempts to regain his footing. Meanwhile, Thelmach had been tracking Dobbin's position for his ranged attack. When she suddenly disappeared under Grovash, his targeting systems lost lock. By the time he reacquired her position, she was already moving again. Dobbin used the debris from the collision as cover, sprinting toward one of the platform levels. Thelmach's energy blasts struck the metal floor where she had been moments before, leaving smoking craters. "Impossible," Thelmach muttered, his armor system struggling to track her rapid movements. Dobbin reached the platform and immediately changed direction, using its height advantage to launch herself toward Thelmach's airborne position. The armored warrior tried to maneuver away, but his flight systems were designed for stable hovering, not rapid, evasive action. She landed on his back and immediately began striking specific points on his armor's power conduits. Each blow was precisely placed to disrupt energy flow without causing permanent damage. Within seconds, Thelmach's weapon systems went offline. "Warning, power failure in primary systems," his armor's computer announced. Without power to his flight systems, Thelmach crashed to the arena floor. Dabin rolled away from the impact and was already moving toward her next target before he hit the ground. Grovash had finally untangled himself from Zixara's confused forms, but the collision had disoriented both of them. The Vrix warrior was struggling to coordinate her scattered bodies, while the Keth fighter was shaking his head to clear his vision. Dobbin approached Grovash from his blind side, moving silently across the arena floor. When she was close enough, she struck pressure points along his neck that disrupted nerve signals to his motor functions. The massive warrior collapsed immediately, conscious but unable to move properly. "I cannot," Grovash tried to speak, but his vocal cords were not responding correctly. Zixara was the last opponent still functioning, but her coordination problems were getting worse instead of better. Without the perfect synchronization between her multiple forms, she could not execute any of her species' advanced combat techniques. Dabin approached the confused Vrix forms calmly. "You rely on constant communication between all your bodies," she said. "But what happens when that communication is disrupted?" She demonstrated by striking specific nerve clusters on 2 of Zixara's forms. The attacks did not cause injury, but they interfered with the bioelectric signals that connected her multiple bodies. Within moments, all of Zixara's forms were moving independently, each one confused about what the others were doing. The perfect unity that made Vrik's fighters so dangerous was completely broken. "I yield," Zixara said, her voice coming from all forms at once but lacking coordination. We all yield. The arena fell completely silent. Dobbin stood in the center of the combat area, surrounded by 3 defeated opponents. She was breathing slightly harder than normal, but showed no signs of injury or exhaustion. The entire fight had lasted less than 30 seconds. "Winner," Veltar announced, his voice barely audible over the stunned silence. "Captain Lee Dobbin of Earth." Slowly, scattered applause began from different sections of the arena. Then more applause. Within moments, the sound grew into a thunderous roar, as thousands of alien voices expressed their amazement at what they had witnessed. Dobbin helped each of her opponents to the medical station, where tournament staff began treating their temporary conditions. All 3 would recover completely within a few hours. "How?" Thelmach asked as medical technicians worked on his armor. "We coordinated our attack perfectly. We anticipated your movements. We prepared for everything we thought you might do." "You prepared for everything you could imagine a human doing," Dobbin replied. "But you prepared based on your own understanding of combat. You assumed I would try to avoid your attacks or match your strengths directly. What did you do instead?" Grovash asked, his voice still slightly slurred from the nerve disruption. "I used your coordination against you. Each of you had a perfect plan for your individual attack, but none of you considered what would happen if those plans interfered with each other." Zixara's forms were slowly regaining their synchronization. "We have fought together in training exercises. We practice coordination. You practice not getting in each other's way," Dobbin corrected, "but you did not practice what to do when an opponent deliberately creates chaos in your formations." As the medical staff finished their work, Dobbin turned to address all 3 opponents. "You are all excellent fighters. In individual combat, any one of you could have defeated me if you had been more adaptable. Then how did you win so easily?" 3 days after Dobbin's victory over 3 opponents, the entire atmosphere of the Nexus Arena had transformed. Where once alien species had viewed humans with amusement or dismissal, now they watched Dobbin with a mixture of respect and wariness that bordered on fear. The remaining tournament matches continued, but everyone knew the real story was the small human woman who had single-handedly defeated 3 of the galaxy's most formidable warriors in less than 30 seconds. Alien news networks broadcast analysis of the fight continuously, with military experts from dozens of species trying to understand exactly what had happened. Dabin sat in the observation deck, no longer alone. Kelthor of the Silent Reaches had requested permission to join her, as had several other competitors who had been eliminated in earlier rounds. Even former opponents like Quelrix had asked to speak with her about human combat techniques. "Your species fights wars of adaptation," Kelthor observed as they watched the current match below. "You do not rely on superior strength or advanced technology. You study your enemies and turn their advantages into weaknesses. All intelligent species can adapt," Dobbin replied. "Humans are not unique in that regard. Perhaps not. But humans adapt faster than anyone else I have observed. Most species take generations to develop new fighting techniques. You did it in seconds during your matches." On the arena floor, 2 massive creatures were locked in combat. One resembled a living tank with multiple weapon systems. The other looked like a giant spider made of energy. Both were impressive displays of their species' natural abilities. "Captain Lee," a familiar voice called from behind them. Dobbin turned to see Veltar approaching, but he was not alone. With him came a delegation of official-looking aliens representing various galactic governments and military organizations. "I hope we are not interrupting," Veltar continued, "but these representatives have requested a meeting with you." The delegation included species Dobbin recognized from the tournament, as well as others she had never seen before. A crystalline being that might have been related to Quelrix stepped forward first. "Captain, I am Ambassador Zethvel of the Shatterworlds Confederation. On behalf of my government, I would like to formally apologize for underestimating your species and invite Earth to establish diplomatic relations with our worlds. The Keth Empire extends similar invitations," added a scarred reptilian who looked like Grovash's older brother. "We respect strength, and you have demonstrated that humans possess strength of a kind we had not previously encountered." More representatives stepped forward with similar offers: trade agreements, military training exchanges, technology sharing proposals, and formal alliance discussions. Within minutes, Dobbin found herself holding more diplomatic documents than Earth's government had received in the 5 years since first contact. "This is very generous," Dobbin said carefully, "but I am a military officer, not a diplomat. These decisions would need to be made by Earth's government." "Of course," Veltar agreed, "but your performance in this tournament has made it clear that humanity deserves a voice in galactic affairs. The Tournament Council has voted to offer Earth a permanent seat on the Galactic Combat Authority, with full voting rights on military standards and competition regulations." Jiho and Sora exchanged amazed glances. A permanent seat on a galactic council was far beyond what anyone had expected from tournament participation. "There is one more matter," said a new voice. Everyone turned to see a figure in elaborate robes approaching their group. The newcomer was tall and thin, with pale skin that seemed to shimmer in the arena lights. Dobbin had never seen this species before. "I am High Coordinator Nexara of the Galactic Defense Initiative," the figure announced. "We monitor threats to civilized space and coordinate responses when necessary. Recent intelligence suggests that aggressive species from beyond our borders may be planning incursions into inhabited systems." The mood among the gathered aliens became more serious. "The Defense Initiative would like to invite Earth to participate in joint training exercises and strategic planning sessions. Your species' approach to combat could prove valuable in preparing defenses against unknown threats." Dobbin felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. What had started as a simple tournament participation was becoming something much larger. "I will need to consult with my superiors," she said finally. "These are important decisions that require careful consideration." "Of course," Nexara replied, "but time may be a factor. Our scouts report unusual activity in several border sectors. If hostile forces are indeed preparing attacks, we will need all available allies." The meeting continued for another hour as various representatives presented their proposals and requests. By the end, Dobbin had more information about galactic politics and military situations than she had ever expected to encounter. After the delegation departed, Dobbin remained in the observation deck with Jiho, Sora, and Kelthor. Below them, the tournament continued, but it seemed almost insignificant compared to the larger implications of what had just occurred. "This is much bigger than a fighting competition," Sora observed. "They want humans to become active participants in galactic defense. Are we ready for that kind of responsibility?" Jiho wondered. 5 years ago, we did not even know other intelligent species existed. Now they want us to help defend entire star systems. Dobbin watched the current match thoughtfully. 2 alien fighters were demonstrating advanced techniques that represented centuries of martial development for their respective species. "Ready or not, the choice has been made for us," she said. "After today, the galaxy knows that humans are capable fighters. We cannot go back to being ignored or dismissed." "What do you think Earth Command will decide?" Sora asked. "They will want to move carefully. Establish small partnerships first, learn about galactic politics, understand the threats we might be facing." Dobbin stood up from her seat. "But they will also realize that this is an opportunity to ensure humanity's survival and growth among the stars." Kelthor spoke for the first time in several minutes. "Your species has a saying, does it not? About great power and great responsibility?" "Something like that," Dobbin agreed. "Then you understand the situation. The galaxy has seen what humans can accomplish when properly motivated. Now they want to know if you will use that ability to protect others as well as yourselves." A chime sounded through the arena speakers, announcing the final matches of the tournament. Dobbin had already secured her place in the championship round, but the outcome seemed less important now than the broader implications of her participation. "There is something else to consider," Jiho said quietly. "If we join galactic defense initiatives, we will be taking sides in conflicts we do not fully understand. We could make enemies as well as allies." "True," Dobbin acknowledged. "But if we refuse to participate, we risk being seen as unreliable or selfish. That could be just as dangerous in the long term." They made their way toward the preparation areas as the arena filled with spectators for the evening matches. Word had spread that the final tournament rounds would determine not just a champion, but potentially the future direction of galactic military cooperation. "Captain Lee," Veltar intercepted them in the corridor. "I wanted to speak with you privately about tomorrow's championship match." Dobbin nodded for Jiho and Sora to continue ahead, then turned her attention to the tournament organizer. Your opponent will be Kextar of the Void Hunters, Veltar explained. They are a nomadic species that rarely participates in galactic events. Kextar volunteered specifically to fight the human representative. What do you know about Void Hunter combat techniques? Very little. They keep to themselves and do not share information about their capabilities. What I can tell you is that Kextar has never lost a fight, and his species is rumored to hunt creatures that other aliens consider mythological. Dobbin considered this information. An unknown opponent with no available combat data would be her greatest challenge yet. There is one more thing, Veltar continued. Several species have privately suggested that the outcome of tomorrow's match will influence their decisions about future cooperation with humanity. If you win, Earth will be seen as a major galactic power. If I lose, everyone will assume that my previous victories were lucky accidents, Dobbin finished. I am afraid so. The political implications of this tournament have grown far beyond what anyone anticipated. Dobbin smiled. Then I suppose I had better not lose. As she walked toward her quarters to prepare for the final match, Dobbin reflected on how much had changed since she first arrived at the Nexus Arena. She had come as a representative of a species that nobody took seriously. Tomorrow she would fight as the potential voice of humanity in galactic affairs. The responsibility was enormous, but she felt ready for it. After all, adapting to impossible challenges was what humans did best. Outside her window, alien starships from dozens of species filled the space around the arena station. Representatives, reporters, and military observers had arrived from across the galaxy to witness the conclusion of the most significant tournament in galactic history. Tomorrow would determine not just who won a fighting competition, but how the galaxy would view humanity for generations to come. Dobbin began her final preparation.